Brittany Van Voorhees joins me now. And Brittany, one of the things that we probably get asked, I mean, this weekend I was at a party and every person, I don't know if they just, because they have nothing else to talk about, they everyone wants to talk about the weather. And the first thing I do, and this happens to you, I know, people would talk to you about the weather. And you probably hate talking about your job. I'm like, no, I love talking about the weather. But everybody was like, when is it going to rain? And, usually we would say, oh, there might be a chance Saturday. But I've had to say repeatedly, there's no chance of rain in the foreseeable future. And I know it seems like a cop-out, but it honestly has been kind of the way it's been the last 2 months.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this, but it's felt like the drought has been a big feedback loop where we've already been hot, the ground has been dry, and this is actually what my weather IQ is going to be on Wednesday, so a little teaser for you. But, it's been so hot and dry, so essentially when the sun is, warming up the ground, which is how it works, right? Sun warms up the ground, then eventually warms up the air. When you have a wet ground, it actually takes some of that energy, but when it's dry, it's a lot hotter because it really has nothing else to do. Well, then if you already have high pressure overhead, that dryness just prolongs the high pressure, makes it stronger. And so when you eventually have a storm system that's trying to break it down or push it out of the way, for lack of a better term, it's not able to do so because the high is so strong. And I know we've talked about this a lot going into hurricane season, but with El Niño already being a chance to see lesser hurricanes because of higher wind shear, if there's also a very strong Bermuda high that has that chance to kind of block anything from getting anywhere close to us, that means we're not going to get that same help of tropical systems. Now, no one wants a Helene, to be clear, but those little, I would call baby tropical systems that bring us some rain. And that 2007 to 2008 drought, I know we've been referencing this a lot, but that August 2008 where they kind of finally got out of exceptional and extreme drought and eventually got back to normal, a lot of that was prolonged tropical moisture from multiple systems. So that's just it's not looking good so far this year.
Yeah, I mentioned on one of my posts, like I was hoping, I said we need to get a weak tropical system so that you shouldn't wish for a tropical system. But one of the things about the climate of the Carolinas, about 30% of our annual rainfall, 30% comes from the remnants or tropical moisture of a hurricane or tropical system. And again, we're not talking about a Helene or a Hugo, just the influence, like a tropical wave or an old tropical disturbance. It does help produce a lot of rain, Brittany. And unfortunately, if you don't get those, that actually makes the summer chance of getting out of drought look almost like not possible. But we want to look towards the weekend because the last couple of fronts that have headed our way, when was that rain, James? That was I haven't seen it rain that hard in a long time.
I was going to say it could have been it could have been the Charlotte FC match, right, where it poured on Bank of America Stadium.
That's a severe weather day. That was a couple like 3 Mondays ago, I think.
Oh yeah, well was that when we had the tornado?
Yes. Yeah. And so we had some rain then, but it feels like every front that heads our way, and we kind of joke now in the weather office about this, like, every front, it looks like 60% on Monday. By the time I get to the weekend, it's down to like 20%. But I will tell you this, the pattern this weekend, there's another one of these fronts. This is a look at Saturday. And again, I don't think this Saturday front is going to be like a deluge or anything. I think what's more promising to me, and this is kind of what you look at as a meteorologist, not the specifics, but the overall pattern, the fact that another front arrives just a couple days later on Tuesday, to me, Brittany, that's a sign of a pattern change because that's kind of more normal in the spring. Like every 2 to 3 days, you should be getting a weather system in here. And what hasn't happened is that has been blocked by this ridge of high pressure. So the fact that at least we're getting systems, maybe that's the beginning. That's like the appetizer to maybe open the door to a bigger chance of rain, hopefully in May.
Yeah, and the fact that while it is going to be warm, it looks like the temperature is trending more so toward like the 70s, which could indicate less instability, which means that it could be more of a true rainmaker versus scattered thunderstorms, because that's also been a pattern that we've seen. Maybe not necessarily your normal daytime heating during the summer, but where a lot of our rain we've gotten are those isolated pop-up storms. Like it was last week or 2 weeks ago, you and I were in the weather office and they had a few of those pop-up storms in the mountains, but then nothing came down here. That's more of a normal summer pattern where one person's seeing it, nobody is. This looks like it would be a potential pattern for a lot more. And when you have that chance for consistent rainfall versus just a pop-up thunderstorm, then not only is it good because you typically end up getting more, but then you don't have to have that extra risk of trying to warn somebody about gusty winds, and lightning. So you might even be able to go outside and be like in those movies you see where people are so excited that it's raining, they're putting their arms out because this would be our first chance of rain for a long time. And you actually mentioned this at the beginning of the special. So for anybody who's just tuning in just now, the last time that we had above average rainfall in Charlotte for a month was August of last year.
Yeah.
So we are so dry that really, it truly is that time of year in that situation where we're like, anything counts. Now, granted, I wouldn't really want to happen what happened this past weekend, where we actually saw no measurable rainfall in
Yeah.
Charlotte because it all broke apart pretty quickly. Brad, I actually saw this comment on one of my posts this past weekend, and
Yeah.
people were going back and forth. So it is clear that people understand that this is not always the case, but it's a bit of a myth that because we have the mountains, it actually breaks up systems, and that means we don't get rain.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if we wanted to talk a little bit about that, because I do think people think like, oh, the mountains mess everything up for us, but that's not necessarily always
It's
the
actually
case.
the opposite.
Yeah.
We get more rain because of the mountains. If you've ever been to the southwestern mountains, it's a temperate rainforest
Mm-hmm.
because they get pop-up showers and storms every day during the summer with a southeast flow. I think where that myth comes from, Brittany, it's when you get those strong cold fronts from the northwest and it's a shallow line of convection. When they move over the mountains, two things happen. One, the mountains are cooler, so there's cool air. It's more has to do with the cool air over the mountains than it is the actual mountains themselves. But remember, thunderstorms are 30, 40, 50,000 feet tall. The Appalachian Mountains, while they're impressive, that's a bump in the road for those storms.
yeah.
That's really, if you were going to block moisture from getting here, you'd want to have a mountain chain to our south, blocking the inflow of moisture from the Atlantic or the Gulf. That would make us dry. We would be in a rain shadow then. The mountains actually bring us more rain than they do, which usually is the problem, like we saw this weekend, Brittany. The reason that line of that front died is because it wasn't moving into the mountains. It was moving towards a mountain of high pressure.
Yeah, all
parked
the dry
over-
air.
the
Yeah.
dry air, and it couldn't get here. So it was more to do with that. But when we look at the 6 to 10 day outlook, Brittany, this is probably, I think Alex talked about this at 6:30 when we were doing our live weather impact. This is the first time in a long time we've seen the what we call the Climate Prediction Center outlook with at least a 30 to 40% chance of above average rainfall by the end of the month. So there are hints of a pattern change, but as we've been saying, this is a long-term drought. Droughts don't form overnight, they don't go away overnight. And so I don't think we're going to be out of this drought anytime soon. Now, could we see improvement? Absolutely. But I think it would be until next winter that we're completely out of it. And I think just people need to prepare for that. Well, you did a great story today going out to Union County and talking to them. And I think one of the things I would love for people to do is just be smart with your watering year round, whether we're in a drought or not. I don't know how many times I see people water in the middle of the day, water during a thunderstorm. It's like if we would just do common sense stuff year round, we probably wouldn't run into these issues as quickly as we are right now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was us talking about this a few weeks ago, but somebody compared the drought to like your health.
Yeah.
So if you don't, take your vitamins or eat, leafy
Yeah.
greens, yes, you can have dessert every once in a while, right? But doing everything, in moderation and making sure you're being healthy and going on walks and trying to, have proper fitness, whatever the case is. If you are like my dad and have high blood pressure, like take your medicine,
Yeah.
your health breaks down. And so most people, not all, try to make sure that they're maintaining their health all year round, all
Yeah.
life round, so that they don't have to go to the doctor only when things are starting to get bad, because it's much harder to come back from that. A drought is a similar way.
Yeah.
You want consistency, whether it's with rainfall or
Yes.
with people being conservative, that's what I was looking for, with their water intake, because you don't want to wait to be smart, whether
Yeah.
it's water or something else that's environmental related, like fast fashion. I could get on a tangent about that.
Yeah.
But you want people to be conservative all year round, all month round, because that's how you get into an issue.
Yeah, you bring up such a good point. When we're going to, one day in the near future, it's going to rain, Brittany, and I know we're going to hear it. Is the drought over? It's not about a one day, it's about consistency. As you just mentioned, the whole health thing is, it's consistency. The time to get healthy isn't when you get sick or when something bad happens. You need to be healthy all the time so that doesn't happen. That's kind of the way with the drought and rainfall in general. The reason our environment here is so lush and so beautiful is that we tend to get consistent rainfall. These crazy extremes of too hot, too cold, too hot, or too dry, too wet, that's not good. Like, we can adapt to it as humans, but our environment cannot. Plants and animals cannot adapt as quickly. Like on a hot day, we can go inside, turn the air conditioner on. An animal stuck outside on a hot day, it's stuck in the heat. There's
Yeah.
nothing they can do. So